Lossien here, and today for our one-day build, we're getting married. So many ruffles, so much gathering. I didn't realize. I didn't know that this is actually not a one-day build. I should have realized that. This is gonna be a two-parter. So this is part one. Next week we'll do part two because this gathering is almost overwhelming. In part one, we're going to cover what materials we're using for the project, and then we're going to go over what measurements we need, also how to make the pattern using your measurements. We're going to cut out the mock-up, and then we're going to sew it all together, and also try it on and make any alterations we need. The next video, we'll cut the actual thing out and sew it all together. But for now, we're just working on the first few steps. So today we're making Lydia's wedding dress because it's beautiful and I really like it, and we're gonna need a lot of stuff. First off, the fabric. We want like a base fabric that's got no stretch to it and is opaque, meaning you can't see through it. Then I also got this off AliExpress. Each one of these is 10 meters and I have 10, 11. But it's this length, which is hopefully about the length I need for the skirt. All of the tulle I got off of AliExpress. I also have some leftover, like just plain red tulle in case I run out. I'm hoping I don't. You can always just get it from the local fabric store and go from there. I have a petticoat from a wedding dress that I bought, and it is the perfect shape for underneath the red skirt. You'll see it when we start to do all the measuring. I also have long red gloves that go to about here. Got them off of Amazon or Ali. I don't exactly remember. I've had them for a very long time. They're like a satin glove, quite nice, because she does have them over top of her sleeve. Now we're also going to need a zipper. The only zipper I have is black, but it's going to be on the back and hidden by the actual veil as well. And then because this is not quite long enough, I'm going to do red buttons on the top part where it's just the mesh and the neck piece, just to help bridge that gap. I've also got a comb for the veil, and then I've got a bunch of zip ties that I'm going to use as boning for the bodice just to give it that nice shape. I've got some masking tape that I'm going to use to tape the boning to the mock-up that we're going to make, just to make sure everything fits nicely. I've got some really cheap like cotton polyester fabric. There's no stretch to it. I got this for like 30 cents a yard. I like using it for mock-ups, but I have like bolts of this stuff. I bought it when it was on super sale. We're also going to want, of course, a measuring tape, pins, a ruler. Now I'm going to use different colors of Sharpies just so we can like clearly see when we're pattern making what's going on. I also have a black Sharpie. And a notebook to write down all our measurements in, and as a sort of guide for me to know the general what we're doing. So I guess it's time to take some measurements. Okay, petticoat on, the correct shape bra is on. It's the exact same as my strapless. I just don't want to have to worry about strapless right now. So now I'm going to start with my horizontal measurements. I'm going to measure around my neck, and then I'm going to measure from the middle point to my shoulder, where that bone is, making note of where my neck ends. Now I'm going to measure my full bust, and I'm also going to measure my front bust, which is side seam all the way across to the side seam. I'm going to measure my waist. Now we're going to measure the about hips of the skirt, and I want to make sure that this is loose and not too tight. I want to measure about halfway down, and just make a note that I have to do that times 2. And I'm also going to measure the hem of this. It's a lot of measuring. I'm also going to measure, while we're doing horizontal measurements, my bicep and my elbow, my flexed elbow actually, and my wrist. Now we're going to do the horizontal measurements. I'm going to start with how high I want the neck to be. It's actually not that big. For me, it's only 2 inches. Now I'm going to measure the drop on my neck, so you can kind of feel that your chest starts and your neck ends, and I want to measure the distance between this shoulder point where my neck meets my shoulder and how low down this is. So what I like to do is pinch it at the 0, put it here, have your hand come all the way over and pinch it, and then you should have it. And do something very similar for the back. The back is a lot harder to do. About 1.5 inches is the normal. Mine measured just under that, so. Now, for the rest of our vertical measurements, we're going to measure from the neck point to the bust, from the bust to the waist. Mine is just above the belly button, and it's whatever also feels the most comfortable for you. A lot of people do them too low, especially in something this style. So I recommend over the hip bones. Now I'm going to measure the skirt waist to about where we measured the hip was 9. Our midway point was about here, which is 21. And to the hem is 42. Now I'm just going to double check that that 42 length looks right, and to do that I'm going to put this at 42, put this here, here, and here, and see where that bottom hits? It's just above the floor, like barely. That's exactly what I want. So perfect. Now when I stand up straight, it sits a little higher. When I lean like this, it starts to dip down, so it is harder to do your own measurements. Now we're going to do the same top measurements, but on the back. The last things we're going to do is just do the sleeve total so I'm going from that bone in my shoulder to my wrist, which for me is 24, and I'm making note that 13 is where the bend in my elbow is. It's time to start making a pattern. First things first, I'm gonna start with purple because that's the color I put in my hand first. And we're just gonna give ourselves a straight line down the selvage edge because this is where we're gonna put our zipper in. And then on this side, we're gonna use the fold that exists. So we're gonna build our back here and our front here. And I'm gonna put down my, all my vertical measurements. So I always start down a bit and give myself space to have seam allowance and to adjust the shoulder and everything. So I'm going to mark from my neck point to my bust point on the front. And I'm going to do the back at the same time. Now that is the same measurement for me. Then I'm going to do bust to waist, which for me does have a 1/2 inch difference. And I'm just going to do a quick measurement on the side seam and see where that ends up. It is the back measurement. So I know that this is going to have to come up just a bit as it comes out. So that is a good thing for me to know. I'm going to put a little star here so I remember, because that's where the difference is. We're going to end this draft at the waist because we're going to do the waist and the skirt as 2 separate pieces and then attach them together. So my next step is going to be drawing out some horizontal lines, and you want to make sure these lines are perpendicular to where you started, like to that first line you have. And this is just to give us something to put all of our horizontal marks on for the width of everything so that we know where we're going and we don't have to worry about it. And the next thing we're going to do is start with that shoulder measurement. So we did measure how far from the center of the neck to the neck point where your shoulder meets your neck, and then continue that out to the shoulder measurement. So we have that. On this side, I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, and I'm also, while I'm here, just going to put the neck drop that we have for the front and also for the back, which is much less. So what you're going to want to do is go up 1/4 of an inch at the neck point and down 1/4 of an inch at the shoulder point. And we're going to make that a new line. I'm going to use my blue color just so I know for sure which one it is. Now, while you're here, it is very easy just to make this into a right angle on both sides because we do want that. We always want to work with right angles here. And on the back, we'll do the same thing. We go up 1/4 of an inch at the neck point and down 1/4 of an inch at the shoulder point. Then we connect those two new points and we're going to make right angles. On the bust line, we did measure the front bust, so I'm going to take half of that measurement. Okay, and the back is going to be your bust measurement minus your front bust measurement divided in half. And we're going to take 1/4 of the waist measurement. And we did need to measure up from the bust to the armpit, and I'm going to do 2.5 inches instead of 3. And I'm just going to come straight up from the bust line for that and make that a right angle as well, just so I can eventually connect those up. Which, you know what, we might as well do now. So I'm just making a J shape and making sure that I'm using those right angles so that it is at a right angle at the top and bottom. And I'm also going to connect the neckline. So we've got a right angle here and I've got a right angle here. And I'm just making a C shape. So the sleeve is a J and the neck is a C shape. Now for the back, all we have to do is connect down to the waist there. At the front, we want to do something very similar. However, this and this are different measurements. So, here I've got 7 1/4, and that actually puts me right here. So I do know that we want a dart. I'm going to put my dart in this seam here so that you won't see it with all the ruffles on the neck. And to do that, we're gonna find out where the bust point is. So I'm measuring from my center front to where the nipple is and marking that down. And then we move out 1 inch from that along this line. So this is my end point for the dart. And then what I'm going to do is draw this here. And I'm gonna take it up just the tiniest bit and take this up. There we go, because that to me looks right. And I'm taking it up because I don't want this to end right on the bust line. That doesn't seem right to me. So I'm doing just a little more, and that also makes it a full inch as opposed to 3/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch. So now this measurement equals this measurement. This still equals this. The front is done, the back is done. It's time to make a sleeve. So I'm gonna draw my horizontal line to start. Now, if you don't have enough to do this in the center, you can of course just do it differently on your fabric. Just make sure that your grain line is running up and down. I like to do it in the middle because it uses less fabric, but to each their own. And you only really have to do one sleeve. We're only going to attach one sleeve to see how it fits. I'm going to mark down 8 for my bicep. It's just the magic number. Then I'm going to mark down my elbow and my sleeve total. Once those are marked, we're going to make some perpendicular lines like we always do. And we do just want a tiny perpendicular line here. Now I'm going to take half of my bicep and measure it on each side of this, or you take your full bicep and just make sure that the halfway mark is right in the center there. And for the elbow, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to have very thin seam allowance on this so that I can fit it all. And for the wrist, I'm actually going to add 1/4 of an inch because I want to be able to get it past my hand. And then we're going to connect the bicep to the elbow, and then the elbow to the wrist on both sides. We have a right angle here, but what do we do with this? We're gonna make a bell shape, and how big do we want that bell shape to be? I'm going to measure how much my armhole is. So what I like to do is take the measuring tape, add about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch to that measurement, so that's 11 and 10.5, and make that bell shape with your measuring tape, and then trace it out. There are a million specific ways to do sleeves. They get really complicated. I'm not about that. This will get you a good enough sleeve. It won't be perfect, it'll be good enough. And then we're going to take a moment and cut these all out before I move on. Where did I put my scissors? Before we move on to the skirt. Now you can take a moment and add all your seam allowance on first. I'm not going to. I'm going to notch that center front as well so I know where it is. I am going to notch the bottom of the darts to make my life easier, and the center front here. And we're going to put that to the side because we will still need that neck measurement. And I'm going to mark the center at the top of the sleeve as well. We're initially going to cut this in half and have 2 pieces put together that we will then, for the actual fabric, change where the seam is. We're doing it the easy way to make the pattern, and then we will go back and fix it. So what I'm doing is, starting at this line here, I'm going to put where my seam allowance ends and straighten it out and mark where that is. So that's my back neck length. Then we're going to measure the front neck. I'm going to make a mark 4 3/4 out, and then I'm going to move up 1/2 inch at this end and 1.5 inches in and connect this back, doing kind of a gentle bend. Now I know I wanted it 2 inches. That is the width of this ruler. So for this part, I'm just going to hold my ruler there, and we're going to make this end perpendicular to the rest of it. So eventually this will be on a fold, but for now we're going to put a seam there. I'm going to just cut this out with seam allowance all the way around. And I am taking a moment to notch that shoulder seam, the difference between the front and back neck. That the entire bodice part is done, and all that we have left is the skirt. For length, we know our width at the 3 different points. What I'm going to do is divide that width by 6, because we're going to do a 6-panel skirt so that the movement is all the way around. So now that I have those 4 measurements, which is my waist, my hips, the midpoint on the dress, and the hem of the dress, they're all measured and divided by 6. We're going to make the panels. So I'm going to start along the fold, because that's just easiest. And we're gonna give ourselves a top point and measure down the whole length. And I'm gonna mark down where that midpoint was, or the hips were. For me, that was 10. Where the midpoint was, which was 21. Now these lines are going to swoop kind of in this shape, which means we don't need to draw straight out. What I'm going to do is measure out the hem amount, which is 24. Ooh, this is placed on fold, so we actually need half of that. And we want half of that waist measurement. Now I'm going to measure from this top mark to, where did it go? This bottom mark, as if it was a straight line. And you'll notice that it is not actually the same amount. I've gained an inch. So I'm going to mark that new amount and all my new distances. And now I'm going to connect from that first mark to that second mark, which you can see is not straight. On the bottom, I like to give it just a little bit of curve. Now I'm going to measure along this line the amount, which is half of that 1/6 measurement. And now we can connect those points vertically. And I'm gonna cheat that hip out just a little bit because that looks more right to me, and it is always better to have it go out just a bit than have it come in. And I'm going to cut this out with seam allowance. So now we need 6 of these, but one of those 6 we want to have a seam down the center back because we have to put the zipper in. The easiest way to cut a bunch of these out is to take this piece we just made and turn it into a pattern piece. So you can see I'm opening it up because it does fit on my fabric nicely here, and I'm just trying to make sure that this fold line does go vertically. So I'm going to cut 2 more out. Okay, so now I have 3. I'm going to take that first one we did again, and that's the one I'm going to use as my main pattern piece that I'm always copying. And I'm going to cut them out again. To get the back piece, I'm going to put it on the fold again, like fold this up. And then I'm going to place it with some seam allowance there instead of the fold. And we're going to cut that out. Now you can see that I'm cutting it upside down compared to what it was before. That's because this fabric doesn't have a top or bottom or shape or anything. If you're using something with a nap, like a velvet, then you actually would have to make it all facing the same way, but we're not doing that. And we're just gonna trim this seam allowance down so I know exactly how much is there. And we're gonna take that very first piece again, put that back piece to the side, and we're gonna open this up again. Cut it one last time. That'll give us our last pieces. Six pieces of skirt, a front and back bodice, 2 sleeves, and a neck piece. It's time to go base this all together and see what it looks like. Okay, I've got my zipper and all my pieces, and we're gonna start with a really wide basting stitch because we're gonna be tearing this all apart after. I say we're gonna be tearing it all apart because this is going to become the pattern pieces for our actual fabric. I'm gonna put the zipper to the side for now, and I have the collar piece here. So the very first thing I'm going to do is on the front of this, I'm going to just stitch that down to make it one piece. And it doesn't matter what color your thread is for basting because it's all gonna come out, and this isn't our actual fabric anyways. Just taking out the front pieces, putting everything else to the side to help keep track of everything. Okay, so that's the back piece. We're gonna put that over here, much closer. We're gonna do the darts next, and I should have brought my pins up and I didn't. That's okay. I'm going to use a safety pin and I'm gonna push it right through the dart point, all the way through both pieces of fabric. When I come to the other side, then I know exactly where it is. I can push it through again from this side, and that way when I open it up, each side has a mark. Then all we have to do is find those 2 notches that we made, put them together, and use that mark as the end, and we're gonna sew from those, where those 2 notches meet, all the way to that end point. And I'm gonna repeat on the other side. We're not back tacking on any of this because we're gonna rip it all apart. So now I'm laying this down, good side up, although we are gonna try the whole thing on inside out. Now I'm going to take each of my 2 back pieces, lay them down so that the shoulder matches up, and that center seam is facing each other. And we're going to sew along the shoulder. Now I'm going to attach the neck next. And to do that, on the good side of the neck, you can see here, I'm going to place my seam that we just did at that center front mark where that notch is. And then I'm slowly going to walk together the curves as we go. And then I'm going to flip it to the other side and do the same thing on the other side. It'll just be upside down to what we were looking at before. And our neck is attached. So next, I'm going to lay this down, seam allowance facing towards the back, so that I'm looking at the armhole, and I'm going to take my sleeve. Now the notch on the top of the sleeve lines up with the shoulder seam here. And we are going to try and stretch, because this is the bias, it will stretch just a bit, so we're going to stretch the armhole as we keep the sleeve unstretched and put them together. If you're struggling with that, what you can do is just do a quick basting stitch along the top, probably third to third, and then gather it in so it equals about a third and a third of this. And this time we're going to stretch the top because that's our armhole. I'm only putting in one sleeve so that I can make any adjustments I need to easier. I'm going to connect armpit to armpit and sew all the way down the sleeve. And then from the armpit, we're going to sew down the body. And on the other side, all you have to do is place it down and sew from the armpit down, because we don't have a sleeve on this side. I mean, if you wanted to attach a sleeve, you could, but I'm not going to worry about it. And then we're going to put the top to the side and work on the skirt. So the first thing I'm going to do on the skirt is that front piece we were using as a pattern is going to be the very front, and the back piece with the seam is going to be the very back. So I'm going to put those to the side. And the pieces that are two pieces, so this is two pieces together and so is the other piece, I'm just going to sew all the way down one side. And I'm going to do the same for this other one here. Now what I'm going to do is this piece that's sewn down the side, I'm going to open it up so that we're looking at the good side. And I'm going to take my front piece, which was that piece we used as the pattern piece, and open it up and put it good side down. And so all the way down one side. So now I'm going to unfold it. So I'm looking at the good part of the center front piece with the fold down the middle. And that other side piece we did with the seam down the side, we're gonna open that up and place it good side down, so the seam's on the outside, and match it to the other side of the center front, and sew all the way down that one. Now I'm gonna open that again. So this was the side piece. This is gonna be our side seam. And what I'm going to do is take that back piece that has the seam down the back and take 1/2 and sew it down this side. But when I place it good side down, I want the center of that to be here. So I have my 2 pieces here, and I want the top piece so that when I place it on top, the seam is towards the inside there. And we're gonna stitch that all the way down. And now we are going to go all the way back along. So if we go up to the top and we go all the way back to the other side here, we're gonna attach the back to the other side. So when we lay this down, good side to good side, again, that center seam is on the inside. Now I'm gonna just flip it so the center piece is on the bottom so that I can actually sew it all the way down. Now we have to attach the skirt to the top. Now, I'm going to find where that center panel was, and what I should have done was notched that at the middle, because that is our center front notch. So I'm going to lay that down good side up, and I'm going to take my top and lay it good side down, matching the center notch to the center notch. And then I'm going to sew around this, and I'm going to make sure that the side seam matches up with not this seam of the skirt, but the second seam there. So I'm flipping it so that the top is on the bottom now. And I'm starting at that center notch again. Okay. So now I'm gonna go down about 10 inches here and make a mark, because that's where I'm gonna put my zipper in, because that's my hip line. So now there's a lot here, but we're gonna find that waist seam all the way around and connect it here. And then I'm gonna go down to where that 10-inch mark was, and I'm gonna sew from there all the way down the dress, so that the back is all connected to itself. Okay. I say okay a lot. Just reminding myself that everything's okay. With the zipper in hand, we're gonna sew it down. And I don't need this to be perfect. This is just to get an idea of the fit. So, and we're gonna try it on inside out. I'm just going to sew it down flat like this, all the way up one side, and then flat on the other side, all the way up. So I'm just putting it basically on that seam line, and I'm gonna baste it in. So now to do this side, I'm just pushing all the seam allowance from the other side down, and then I'm folding this like this, and I'm stitching it from the other side. And last but certainly not least, we just need to put some boning in. So I'm going to go to about the bust line, and all I'm going to do, I think I want to go just above the bust line actually. So to do this, I take my boning, trim off the end, and I like to trim the corners off so it's not as pokey. I measure how high I want it, and then I trim the other side. I don't want it to go straight into the armpit because that's going to hurt, so I went about an inch above the bust line. Let me just see. That's perfect there. And I'm going to do the front one a little lower. I'm going to use this extra bit for the very front. So that means I need to cut 4 of these and 2 of these. And I'm always using the same one as the start one to measure against. So they're always the same length. Otherwise, sometimes they'll start to get a little longer or a little shorter as you go. Now, here's the part where I cheat because I don't want to have to build casing for a mock-up. That's a lot of work. So instead, what I'm going to do is place my piece down. I'm going to put this just under that bust line, which is an inch in from the side there. I like to put it right down to the waist, and I'm going to take a piece of masking tape, or fabric tape as the case may be, and tape it directly down. Now the nice thing about this is that you can actually adjust it as you go. So we'll put that just behind, or just in front of the side seam. And you can add more boning if you'd like to. I just want this to have a bit of shape, but not too much. And then on the back, we're gonna do it where the princess seam would be, which is about halfway between the side seam and the center back seam. There we go. So now this is good to try on with the petticoat, with the correct bra and all that. And we will mark on top of it where we want all of the seam lines to go for all the frou-frou in the front and all that. Okay, all in all, it's not bad. It's too tight in the arm. Like the entire arm from the bicep down. So I need to put about an inch into the bicep. All I did was open it up with my fingers and then see how much it wanted to sit open. The length is good. There is way too much extra up here. Okay. So I need to put a dart in here in the sleeve, because you can see it's just like gaping up here, which we don't want. And I'm just gonna adjust one side as opposed to both sides, and then I'll just copy those adjustments over to the other side. This needs to come in a bit. It's too far out. And this needs, the bicep needs to come out here. You can see that's why it's like, it's too tight in the bell shape. So if I can widen that, but I also have to widen the bicep, so that'll work out well. I think in terms of like overall look, it's fitting fairly nicely. I like the skirt. It has enough movement but not too much. It's a decent length. The sleeve is pretty messed up. So now I'm gonna grab my reference photo, and I'm gonna use the wide Sharpie. The neck is feeling nice, not too tight, not too loose. And it comes to about here. She's got a little bit of cleavage, but it's all boofy. We're just gonna go up to the very tip of the shoulder, and then any weirdness here will be hidden by all the ruffles. That's pretty straightforward. That's actually not a lot of alterations. And then in the back, it feels all right if this is like buttoned over. We're gonna do buttons with loops. So apart from the sleeve being a pretty major failure, oh, and one of my tapes are coming off, that's pretty good. I like where everything's sitting. I think it's time to cut it out. Well, we'll redraft the sleeve and then cut it out. We're going to be tackling that in part 2 when we cut out all our fabric, sew it all together, and reveal the final look. I can't wait to show you all. Let's hope it turns out well. See you then. What do you think?
A little much, but yeah.
I can do it again. I'll do more than one take, right?
Do you want me to stop it? Oh.
What?
I've been recording that first one.
Did you just press record and it started recording?
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
This is not a one-day build. I was wrong. This is a 2-part episode.